without mentioning age or date of birth. How old are you? When you're 50, your doctor will probably recommend you get it then, because it helps reduce the risk of getting shingles. You see, the chickenpox virus, like many other herpes viruses, hides in your nervous system, out of reach of the immune system, for the rest of your life, only getting whacked when it ventures out. If you manage to have a moment where your immune system is weakened, which happens more frequently in old age, you can get reinfected with a much nastier outcome. Getting a vaccine booster against it helps the immune system stay trained to prevent that. I had a coworker who was 10 years younger than me, and we occasionally discussed things related to our age gap. One time, we were discussing the chickenpox, and I said, "Oh, I bet you never had the chickenpox, did you? Were you vaccinated?" His response was a yes with a clear undertone of "Didn't your parents love you?" Blew his mind when I clarified there was no chickenpox vaccine when I was 12 when I got the chickenpox, but I wasn't really that sick with it. Even though they say the older you are the worse it is, it was just after the March break and I got an extra week off of school, and then we had Easter, so I wasn't complaining. I'm still going to get my shingles vaccine when I'm older, though. Shingles makes chickenpox look like a couple of nasty mosquito bites. This is true. My aunt never had chickenpox as a kid and her daughter got it at school and infected her as well. It nearly killed her. She got COVID last year and it really put things in perspective when she said that she would rather get COVID every year than to ever have to deal with chickenpox as an adult. It's okay, it was a long time ago, but it is a scary illness. That's why I went ahead and got the shingles vaccine, because shingles is way more scary than chickenpox, and I already had chickenpox, so I wasn't able to get that vaccine as a kid. I'm glad your grandpa got through it. I highly recommend having him and anyone old enough in your family get vaccinated. You don't have to be elderly if you have other risk factors. I know it's only anecdotal, but I was the oldest kid I knew who got it when it swept through my school, and I was the most miserable for sure. We knew a toddler who got it who only had about a dozen spots on him at any time during his infection. I had transferred schools and everyone in my class had gotten it during a previous outbreak. Yeah, there was no vaccine, and if you got it as a kid it was generally not a big deal. But getting it as an adult is bad, so it was considered better to get it over with ASAP. I did know a kid who didn't get it until he was 17 and he was really sick with it. I had it at 9, but it wasn't deliberate. Kid came to school asymptomatic and gave it to like everyone. Yeah, I was born a little while after the vaccine made it to my country, US. And after it was widely implemented and was just like WTH after reading this comment because I hadn't heard of this before lol. But TBH after a minute of thinking and remembering things like COVID parties existed back in the beginning of the pandemic, I wasn't that surprised lol. Still sorta weird to think about, like a mom saying "Okay Billy, now go have fun and cough on your friends." Though, at least that's what I'm picturing now. All my friends had pox parties except me. I absolutely refused. Even as a little kid it sounded absolutely gross. Hearing about COVID parties makes me way more grossed out and angry the more I think about that. So I lucked out and got the chickenpox vaccine by total accident when I went into the doctor for a checkup to get cleared for HS sports, and the doctor looked at my history and just randomly asked if I ever had chickenpox. When I said no, she left the room without saying anything and grabbed the vaccine and a needle and just said, "You definitely want this," and that's how I got it at 14 yo. Yeah, I get it, but as someone who wasn't growing up with that as the norm, still sorta weird to me lol. But then again, since at the beginning of the pandemic COVID parties were a thing, not completely surprised. But since chickenpox is milder, I guess it's a bit better I guess, but as other comments are mentioning, shingles are a thing with lol. I'm from the Netherlands. Kids don't get a chickenpox vaccine here. Most, 95%, Kids just get it and everyone thinks that's normal. My stepdaughter just had it, waiting for the other 3 to get it. When asking the in-home daycare of the youngest if we could still bring him when he has chickenpox, she replied, "Yes, please. My 2 boys haven't had them yet," and the mother of F, other child that goes there, recently asked if I knew anyone with chickenpox so F could get over with it. I was an adept in elementary, cried like a baby when the teacher read the end of Where the Red Ferns Grow in class. This was after reading it at home the night before, just bawling. Asked the teacher if I could be excused from class cause I was upset and got a stern no. Did not live that down for the rest of the school year. No one who loves dogs wants to read about the beloved dog eviscerated by a cougar in front of their peers. Mrs. Birch. I remember literally being in an English class at university and we were watching the road. I was bawling quietly in the front and our professor was giving me some glances before abruptly ending class early for the day. I forget the reason, but it seemed like an excuse since movie was nearing the end and we never got out early. Best professor ever. TBH, grade school teachers never had empathy for shit like that. I was in elementary school. We were in the cafeteria and someone had wheeled in a TV so we could watch the lift off. The TV got turned off and all of the teachers were upset but trying to hide it. I didn't know until much later what actually happened. Fast forward a couple of years and the O.J. Simpson trial is finally going to get a verdict. Every class is tuning in. Except my biology class. No one had cell phones back then. Maybe a pager. We had to wait until after class to hear the verdict. Similar to how I felt watching the Twin Towers collapse, not sure what was going on, or at the knowledge that it was bad. For context, I was in 4th grade when Challenger blew up. The teachers' reactions were what made me realize that it was bad. On September 11th I was asleep until 2:30 EST and my mom came over after work and asked me why I wasn't answering my phone. Her response to what was going on made me realize that something bad happened. I was in 4th grade that day, and happened to be down in the principal's office during the launch. They had it on the radio there, and when I heard what happened I ran up to my classroom to tell everyone that the space shuttle had just exploded. My teacher furiously grabbed me by the neck, called me a liar in front of the class and dragged my back down to the principal's office only to find everyone there in tears. She never apologized. I still remember it vividly, despite my terrible memory. When that spaceship came on screen, I was like, wow, that's cool, and then the Star Destroyer came into frame and kept coming. And the entire theater was like OMG. My grandpa took us to see it. I also remember seeing him doze off as we were driving home and I would nudge him to get his attention. Those were the days when we thought he had narcolepsy but later found out he was hiding a drinking problem. Such a mixed bag of emotions. Also 37 and fucking loved that movie, but I don't think it's a movie everyone automatically loved. Reasons to maybe not love it could include not caring for puppets, characters randomly breaking into song, and gratuitous shots of David Bowie's sweat-painted cat piece. I loved all of those movies. I watched The Last Unicorn after having my first child and dealing with PPD, and the scene where Mally sees the unicorn for the first time had me tears for like 20 minutes. How dare you? How dare you come to me now, when I am like this? Never understood that as a child. I had this Tamagotchi that grew up to be allergic to life. Every time, no matter how much work I put into it. One day my brother hid it. I couldn't find it for days, but I could hear it saying various versions of, "I'm hungry, I'm dying, I swear to God." When I finally found it, it was at its final stage and grew up to have its own couch. I swear to God. Anyway, you're 33. ETA my Tamagotchi was actually a gigabit. I never got to have a flip phone frown. I was pretty jealous of everyone else at school who had one. I thought they were so cool. I just had a standard old beaten-up Nokia phone my parents gave me for emergency calls. When I finally had my own income and had enough money to buy a new phone in 2008, weirdly enough it seemed that flip phones were already going out of fashion. I couldn't find any. I ended up buying a Nokia 6300, which was just a newer, fancier version of the old Nokias without the cool factor of flip phones. Kinda felt like I missed out, haha. Back in '03 it was a curse to have a cell phone at my school. I can remember standing outside of a party at like 3 in the morning and there was a lineup leading to the one guy at the school that had his own cell. People were calling their parents looking to be picked up, and this guy was letting person after person use his cell. It's like how everyone asks you for gum if you have some gum. There was only one newscast at 11 p.m. and before it started, a booming voice asked, "It's 11 p.m. Do you know where your children are?" And after it was over, there was an hour of maybe an infomercial, then a test pattern, and TV was over for the night, and there was only 7 channels. Edit, a user mentioned the Johnny Carson show, so yes, the late night shows did happen after the news, but the TV coming off after those shows, then the pledges of allegiance and then static, test pattern, that was a real thing. I recently had to go to a retina specialist, and was trying to describe to his tech the type of vision loss I had. I said it was a spot that was like static. She just stared at me, so I said like when cable used to turn off for the night, when all the programming was done. I think she was ready to call for a psych eval. It dawned on me that she was too young to know WTF I was talking about. She may even have been too young to know cable. I grew 3 wrinkles that day. I never actually played Oregon Trail. Like, I can vividly remember my 4th grade class having a computer and that computer having that game on it. I can also remember never getting good enough grades to use the computer, because all the smart kids would hag it to play Oregon Trail and some math game. I never actually played Oregon Trail. Like, I can vividly remember my 4th grade class having a computer and that computer having that game on it. I can also remember never getting good enough grades to use the computer, because all the smart kids would hag it to play Oregon Trail and some math game. When I played Oregon Trail we had to put a telephone receiver into ... I guess it was an early modem. It had 2 black plunger type things that the phone went into, and then you dialed the number to hook up to the game. The game was printed out on a dot matrix printer and we'd tear it off and keep it. You only got to play maybe twice a year because we only had one computer you could play it on. I think everyone died before they made it. When I played Oregon Trail we had to put a telephone receiver into ... I guess it was an early modem. It had 2 black plunger type things that the phone went into, and then you dialed the number to hook up to the game. The game was printed out on a dot matrix printer and we'd tear it off and keep it. You only got to play maybe twice a year because we only had one computer you could play it on. I think everyone died before they made it. I think I only remember anyone's phone number if I was given it before 2010. It was easier to just dial it, and it was never guaranteed that contacts would be reliably saved or transfer. Also, I started knowing a ton more people and phone numbers around 2008, so it was too much to noggin. Ditto for the OG Thundercats. I have had a Thundercats sticker album, totally double-stacked and most tripled. I was obsessed with that show when Cartoon Network brought it back prior to the reboot. I tried 3 apps and stopped midway the 3rd. It's been long enough that nostalgia has returned, but that was eye-opening. I wore dittos and high-waisted bell-bottom jeans to high school. We had a rotary phone in our house. We didn't wear seatbelts in the car until I was older, and most cars only had lap belts. There weren't car seats when I was a baby. Wooly Bully was the #1 song the year one was born, and Flashdance What a Feeling was the #1 song the month and year one graduated high school. Not old enough for some of this, but you brought back memories of the yellow rotary phone we had and the absence of seatbelts. Sitting in a parent's lap was safety for babies, I guess, and the excitement when we got a VCR, no more switching channels during commercials on the metal TV dial when there's two good shows on at once, and first microwave, huge, wood grain design. Not old enough for some of this, but you brought back memories of the yellow rotary phone we had and the absence of seatbelts. Sitting in a parent's lap was safety for babies, I guess, and the excitement when we got a VCR, no more switching channels during commercials on the metal TV dial when there's two good shows on at once, and first microwave, huge, wood grain design. I remember being an amazed kid when the first Jurassic Park came out. I had the Saga game version. Need another hint? I was around the age of Harry Potter as the books came out. My family bought 2 copies and 4 of us would finish each new book in 1 week or less, sharing 2 books. I loved the movie Labyrinth, Goonies. Also, the Howling movies came out when I was becoming scared of things. I know werewolves aren't real, but Howling V is the one I remember. Also, American Werewolf on London, Twister I liked and remember because it came out the only time my class took a walk to the movie theater. Got to see regular TV, then cable come around, then that get commercials, then streaming, and now that gets commercials. Got to see bulletin boards, then Usenet, and then the internet, and then see that become commercials. Don't remember 8 tracks, but they were a thing. Trading cassettes and copying songs off the radio was a thing before burning CDs, and then just files on memory cards or USB, and now streaming. I remember watching the Berlin Wall come down, the shuttle explode, another one break up, and the towers come down. I remember a time on Sesame Street before Elmo. I remember when mountain biking when there were only 2 wheel sizes, and before disc brakes, and before V-brakes. Teddy Ruxpin was the hot new toy when I was a kid. I wanted that creepy bear so bad, but my parents couldn't afford one. My uncle found a life-size talking Mickey Mouse in an apartment that he was cleaning after the tenants left, so he cleaned it up and gave it to me. I got taken to airport jail in Houston for having a USB stick right after 9/11. Airport security, TSA had never seen one, and they said it looked like a cigarette lighter with wires in it so it could be a bomb. They were very afraid to let me stick it into the side of my laptop to show them what it could do. They were convinced I was going to blow them all up. Finally they found a TSA agent who knew what a USB drive was, and as soon as he saw me, a middle-aged white woman with a USB drive, he just started laughing. I was gonna say I watched Reading Rainbow in school, but then I looked it up and holy shit, that show ran for 21 years, so that doesn't narrow it down at all. So I'll go with this. Slap bracelets got banned at my school because kids wouldn't stop slapping the shit out of people with them. One kid slapped his friend in the forehead with one, with his permission, and it stayed on his head like half a headband. We all thought it was hilarious. I think we were a little late on that trend though. When I was in the 3rd grade, my teacher turned on our classroom TV and showed CNN's coverage of the 9/11 terrorist attack. I remember one girl immediately started crying and had to leave the classroom. Turns out her dad frequently commuted to the World Trade Center for business and he was there at the time of the attack. I remember when Yogscast Screw the Nether came out, and I got a netbook as my first laptop at the same time as my older brother, and when I was in elementary school Rick Riordan started the Heroes of Olympus and got to either Mark of Athena or House of Hades a little bit before I got to middle school. In high school when DVDs were starting to appear replacing VHS, I used a portable CD player while others had died MP3 players I think, and I shared a Razr phone with my dad. PS2 was my first console but also had a shared original Nintendo when I was younger. And played Atari and Friends. Windbreaker, Scotty Dog printed sweater. I remember the disappointment of finding out that all the Star Wars comics I had read between the first movie and Empire were all of a sudden not canon. I have no sympathy for all of you bitching about the post-Roach expanded universe not being canon. I lived through it twice. I thought for sure the comics between Empire and Return would be canon. How could they fuck that up twice? They did.